Hello, Teller County, and welcome back. This is our part 2 of our little series that we're doing. This is Ava Flanell is back with us today, and I just want to thank her for coming back in and talking to us. So
thank you.
I think we wanted to kind of have more of a discussion about the Senate and really what's going to happen next with the bill.
Yeah, a lot of people are asking, okay, what's next? It passed out of the House. Does that mean that it's going to make its way onto the governor's desk? It does not. So because there's been so many different amendments, I think I heard yesterday it was like 35 amendments so far, which should automatically be a red flag that this bill is just horrible and that they're trying to make this bill into something that, you know, they're constantly trying to mold it into something that's passable, which is, you know, just horrible. But so now it has to go back to the Senate for concurrence, and that does not give us an opportunity to testify. This is going to be a one-time vote, and then if it passes, then it will go to the governor's desk. I have been thinking, you know, nonstop, okay, do we have a chance of killing it in the Senate? Because obviously it already passed the Senate. The bill started in the Senate. It passed committee, it passed second reading, third reading, and then went on to, finance and then appropriations. So I'm like, I don't know. I mean, we were talking beforehand. You feel a little bit more positive than I do.
Yeah, I don't know about positive. I think there's more of a chance in the Senate to have it stopped because really the House is well known for being very anti-gun.
Yeah.
Right. The Senate, though, has a little more logic to it. They're a little older. They've been around a little longer. So, and I think the biggest thing that's happened is that originally when it passed the Senate, it had a zero fiscal note. And that was how it passed the Senate in the beginning, thinking there was no cost to this.
Yeah.
In the House, I don't think they care about cost. They care more about social agendas than they do cost. I think in the Senate, though, there's more of a look at, you know, what's it going to cost us to run this? And really, I think if you're going to call up to the Senate or different senators and talk to them, what you have to talk about is taking the Parks and Wildlife money away. I think the worry for me is that you have 900 species of animals that now are going to be unfunded for their security and the welfare of those animals. The other piece,
wildlife is already strapped thin.
It is.
Yeah.
They're already underfunded.
It is, and the issue too is they're going to have to totally retool the whole agency to deal with this. It's not like you can just go, hey, all of a sudden we're going to monitor all firearms in the state of Colorado, because that's really what they're asking, right? So originally the fiscal note said, well, we could do it with 8 new personnel, FTEs. I would need 3 to 4 personnel just for my office to deal with this.
Yeah.
For them to believe that only 8 personnel is going to be what they need is absolutely ridiculous. We know that from seeing it. They may need just 8 secretaries to deal with just the amount of information coming in. But that doesn't even talk about the connectors, right? Because they're saying, well, because the concealed carry permits, you already have a database for that. Well, I can't mix the databases.
No.
So that means I've got to go out and buy a whole new software system. The state has nothing set up yet, which means they're going to have to get a software system. We're going to have to buy the connectors for them to talk to each other.
Sure.
I know paying for it. It's going to be taxpayers, right? And it's another unfunded mandate that we have to deal with. So I think if you're calling up and you're talking to senators, it's not always about guns, right? That's not always the discussion that has to be had to save guns. The discussion has to be, it's the unfunded mandate to counties. It's the unfunded mandate to citizens of Colorado, because now they're going to have to pay for all these things on top of the fees. But the issue is how do we deal with a Division of Wildlife or a CPW, because they merged them a few years ago, where they don't have the funding to deal with a lot of stuff they're doing. Like, look at Pueblo right now. Something Pueblo residents should be looking at is that they're not able to pay for boat slips through CPW, and they're taking away your boating and recreational use of the lake in a lot of certain things.
Yeah.
Well, what happens, because they've now extended it to November, I think, to where they're going to allow people in there. CPW is already saying they can't afford this anymore. Well, what makes you think that they can afford this after they get this bill, right? Yeah. So how many other state parks do we have that are going to close or not have personnel, or we're going to cut back on managing that so that we can push
under-maintained.
Right.
Yeah.
So we can push one main goal of really gun ownership.
Absolutely, and not to mention, I mean, they are jeopardizing the Pittman-Robertson revenue. I don't care what they say. They've already, we've heard Bazenecker say, like, no, we've already looked into it, we're not jeopardizing it. I've already caught this guy in quite a few lies. I mean, even the fact that he said that in committee, the first committee, that they allowed everybody who signed up to testify. I said, no, they didn't. They cut it at 12 hours. And most of the people that signed up to testify online didn't even get to testify. I mean, this guy is just lying through his teeth. And the fact that he says that, no, this is not going to jeopardize our chances of losing that revenue is completely false. I mean, it does not matter what he thinks. It ultimately matters what happens if they get audited and the Trump administration, DOJ, when they audit this whole thing. And if they think that the funds were, there was some division, which there's going to be because this is not what they should be doing with the money, we are going to possibly lose $27 to $32 million a year, depending on how many guns we sell because of the tax.
And people don't understand, it's frozen immediately. It's not like, we're thinking about it. So here's what I can tell you from a law enforcement standpoint, because we deal with this on federal funding we receive from seizures and whatnot. So it's called commingling of funds. So in the Pittman-Robertson money, when that money's in that account for the state of Colorado, it's in a single account where all your money goes as citizens that are buying a tag for wildlife and or any of the other fees. They put that into one fund. In that fund, then, all the funds are commingled to a degree. Now, here's the thing about Colorado has been doing it for a long time that's never been called into question, but I think it needs to be called into question now, is really what they're doing is they're moving money out of that into that Colorado Wildlife Fund. Well, the Colorado Wildlife Fund, then they use as an expenditure for other things, because the reason why the state of Colorado does that is because they have a Tabor issue. So if the money goes to the general fund, they can't touch it because of Tabor, right? They've got to give money back to the citizens. Colorado's already in a lot of issues over Tabor Amendment and having to give money back. That's why you're seeing things like, oh, well, this year we're going to give you, $1,000 because you haven't had a DUI.
Right.
Well, that's actually because they went over on the Tabor spending and they have to give you money back, but they're trying to hide the fact that they've misused and appropriated monies, and now all of a sudden they're having to deal with that. So there's already a big issue with that.
Right.
But on top of that now, as that money gets, and really truly it's how businesses launder money from one account to another. So as that money's laundered through this fund, then they're able to say, well, we can use it because it's what's called an enterprise fund, and which then isn't under Tabor restrictions.
Right.
The problem with that, though, is that if they're ever audited on the federal audit side, and I even testify to that, because one of the gentlemen that brought up that to a bunch of young gentlemen that were there asked that question. When I came out to testify, I said, I tell you what, why don't you ask me that question? I will tell you what that means in the federal audit standards. And he left as I was attempting to speak, right? Because nobody really wants to hear what that's going to be. But that is a major issue, because once you start going into that, and that federal audit starts, it's pretty grueling. Every county has gone through it. I don't know that the state's ever gone through it on that funding, but they should be. The problem is I think they've already put that money at risk. But the other side of it is, what happens then if the bill passes and they can't use that fund? Well, it's a law. So now they have to figure out another way to fund it, which is going to be on the backs of taxpayers again. So now all of a sudden the state's gonna, we're already $1.3 billion behind. We now have another $30 or so million that we're going to be shortfall again, because they can't touch that money and they've already passed a bill or a law into effect. Now, what are we, another 1.5 billion in the hole?
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's actually a relatively low, what they're projecting it's going to cost. And I think it was for 10,000 people or 50,000 people.
50,000 people. The sponsors and the supporters of this bill claim that only 50,000 people in the state of Colorado will be affected by this bill. That is an outright lie.
Well, I have 10,000 just in this county alone.
That was 10% of gun owners.
That is an outright lie. It will be 10 times that.
Absolutely.
Well, you have to look too. Colorado has 1.5 million known gun owners. That's just known, right? The Colorado industry for firearms is pretty high, and Ava, you'd probably be able to talk about that the best, because we sell a lot of firearms. We sold 487,000 firearms last year in the state of Colorado. I would assume about 80% of those are actually firearms that are on this bill that are going to be stopped. So people are going to buy firearms. And when that happens, you're looking more towards 300 million, I think.
Absolutely. I agree.
Sure.
It doesn't even make sense that they said 50,000 then 3 million.
I don't know why.
That number is 1% of what it should be.
I know, exactly.
Well, in modern day, one FTE costs almost $100,000 per FTE to the state.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think also people aren't realizing the time that this is going to take, because I don't know about your guys' county, but in El Paso County, which is where I'm from, it is taking now, so they're backed out with appointments until August, and then it's taking the full 3 months before you can have that concealed carry permit in hand. So we're looking at 8 months right now. This is just one step. If you have to now go to Colorado Parks and Wildlife, get this card, get approved, whatever, find an instructor that is certified. Right now in my county, there's only like maybe 30 people that are certified to even teach the concealed carry class. I'd imagine it's going to be very similar to, them being certified to teach this.
The entire state's going to be compromised.
Absolutely. And then on top of that, then you have to make an appointment with the sheriff. And then who knows if you're going to get the card that day, or if it's, there's so many things that they haven't figured out.
Is backlogged with trying to get their CCWs updated.
And so I think that this process is, honestly, I feel very confident saying that it's probably going to be at least a year before they get this eligibility card. Not to mention the cost that people are going to have to pay. I've done the math in my head. So Colorado Parks and Wildlife, they said that they would charge $40. Then there is the fee that the sheriff's office typically that would charge. I'm thinking it's going to be very similar to a concealed carry permit. In my county, it's $135. In some counties, it's roughly about $150. Then the class. So either you're going to get your hunter safety license, take a 4-hour class, or take a 12-hour class. Either way, you're paying for that. Me personally, as a firearms instructor, if I'm teaching a 12-hour class, that is going to be, it's going to be no less than probably $200, but let's say $100. So now we are looking at least on the very cheap end, $300, and I don't even think that you're going to find it anywhere for that.
No,
and we're seeing it
closer to $500 just to
Yeah,
get your permit.
and that is not even to buy the firearm. And I'm sure you guys have seen all the time. There's people that are struggling that can barely afford groceries,
$500,
let alone a firearm. And let's say somebody wants to buy a rifle to go hunting, to put food on their table. Now they have to go through these hoops. It's going to be over a year before you can even be able to go hunt. The whole thing has so many issues, and I don't know why Democrats aren't seeing that.
Well, and CPW even testified to the fact that it's going to take 120 days normally just for a hunter safety card, or they're out that far. That's just for that. The problem on the course is we don't know what they're going to tell us we can verify yet for instructors. So it may be a whole different instructor curriculum and instructors
With
that
this
they
bill passing,
approve.
criteria might change entirely.
Well, and here's the other thing. I'm not so sure they're not saying it needs to be a Colorado CPW instructor, because the law didn't really say. It's just saying we're moving it to CPW. So I think that push of when they can do training, who's going to do the training, how the training is going to get done, I think we are closer to I think more towards 180 days to 260 days just to get a firearms license.
I think that's, again,
fast.
We know
I'm like, that's,
You know how fast these backlogs happen. You probably remember back not that long ago, the state firearms check just to purchase a firearm was days. It was days just to go through the background check.
In 2020, it was about 2 weeks. So, none of this is
and they're talking about having a
out.
third party do background checks.
I know, why?
Here's the other problem I see with that though. You're going to have a third party, but the state's not put it out to RFP. They can't just go, we're going to award it to someone. They have to actually put it out to RFP.
There's a lengthy process just to award
They got to
that
do the
contract.
process, So once they get that contract awarded, how long are we out then? So there's no way to truly fill the functions of the whole bill. So.
Honestly, I think what we can all agree on is that this bill was not about safety. The guns that this gun is banning, and I do say it's a ban because if you can't afford to take the class, you are stuck with buying a gun that does not exist. The only thing that has a permanently fixed magazine that I have found is an AR. if you buy an accessory, like an attachment or something like that, they have fixed magazine ARs. They do not have permanently fixed. There's no major manufacturer that is making permanently fixed.
No, that's modified.
Exactly, and so any other, I mean, and we're just talking about an AR, but this bill's not about ARs. This is about so many other guns, so many other semi-automatic rifles and shotguns that have a detachable magazine. They do not make aftermarket parts for that. The manufacturer does not make them where it's permanently fixed. There's a reason why guns do not have permanently fixed magazines, and that is because it is dangerous. You cannot properly unload it. You can't properly clear a malfunction. That gun does not exist. So yes, this is a ban. And I know there's a lot of people out there that are like, it's not a ban, you can still buy it. You cannot buy it unless you pay to play, unless you pay for your rights back.
Right.
And a lot of people are not going to be able to do that.
Yeah.
I just think about all of this, and it's like, it's just so frustrating that, you know, you can spell this out, and yet some people, some Democrats are just so, I mean, they don't care. They want to pass this.
Well, and I think it's the not being educated about firearms too that really bothers me, because it is frustrating, because I'm hearing things that I can't say anything to because there's other people testifying, but they bring in a so-called expert that knows nothing about firearms. No. And then the other side of it is, you know, they bring a young kid from the Army to testify, and I was listening to this testimony, and I'm like, what are you talking about?
Yeah. No, I mean, and I've trained a lot of people in the military, like to get their concealed carry permit. They're you know, they don't need to take the class, but a lot of people are like, look, I'll be honest with you, just because I'm military doesn't mean that I have experience with firearms. And you know, a lot of people are willing to admit that.
When we go to in front of to testify, we have to follow the law and basically take an oath to that a lot of times, that we swear to tell the truth. Yeah. What I've watched in these hearings is people that are not telling the truth. Right. And it's so utterly amazing to me that even happens, and that they don't verify a testimony
they can say whatever they want. There's no consequences to the lies.
They can. And the issue too, and I listened to someone from, and I can't remember the organization she was with, one of the testimonies by one of the sheriffs, because they asked, you know, what's the difference between the 5.56 round and then the assault weapon round? Well, they're the same. The speed of the bullet doesn't change. Sometimes it changes from barrel length, loads, temps, you know, all these types of things. But if I have it in an assault weapon, that doesn't make the bullet more deadly. It doesn't make it faster. It doesn't do anything to it.
Bolt action 223 is no different than a 5.56 AR-15.
Yeah.
223 AR-15.
And then the other thing they talk about, well, these are weapons of war. There's not a firearm made in history that was not designed for war. Now we use them for hunting, we use them for classes or for competitions or things like that.
Yeah, shooting sports.
But they were all designed for that one use. Now they've been adapted to other uses. But that's not to say just this one firearm is deadlier than another because of what it does.
Yeah. So can I ask you guys something as police officers, sheriff, like you guys have probably seen that there's probably, to my understanding, I've looked at ATF statistics or FBI statistics, that most of the guns that are used, or actually not even, let's say murders, most of the murders do not have anything to do with a rifle or shotgun, from my understanding. Is that correct?
It's mostly pistols.
Yeah, mostly pistols, yeah.
Or
most
have you seen
or dangerous use of firearms is
or have you seen knives or people just using their hands?
We've seen
absolutely
knives probably more than anything. So I actually covered a call many years ago where I had a young gentleman or a young suspect that was stealing a car radio, and the three guys came out of their tents, and that man murdered all three young men with a knife. He killed all three of them as they stood there.
I've seen more injuries from fists, from knives, from bottles, you name it.
Yeah.
You name it.
But I mean, and then when we are talking about firearms, handguns do make up majority of these deaths, which is like, again, this bill is not about safety.
No.
Well, I find it
I've seen firearms used in defense of and preventing felonious attacks and harmful attacks as frequently, if not more so, than I've seen them used in nefarious ways.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And, it's interesting. They allowed for 22 caliber weapons for everything. I've seen more shootings with 22s than I have any other caliber out there. in suicidal issues, but then also in homicides and in robberies. A 22 is found a lot.
Yeah.
So, I look at that and I go, well, if you're really trying to ban weapons that go after these types of robberies or these types of things, there's usually two types. It's usually a 22 caliber handgun or rifle, or it's a 9mm pistol. Those are pretty much.
They definitely missed the mark on this one. Another thing that I wanted to ask you guys, and sorry, I don't mean to turn the tables, but there was one thing in the bill. And I thought that everybody was grandfathered into owning whatever they have. But everybody is saying now that with the magazines, so if you possess a magazine that is higher than 15 rounds, that it is now, I think it's like a misdemeanor or something. Is this true?
I haven't seen that in the bill. I saw that mostly it's grandfathered. But here's the other side of what this bill misses the mark on, is that there's no way for me, a law enforcement officer, if I'm out driving around and I run into somebody with an AR, that I can go, oh, you just bought that gun, it should have an affixed magazine. Exactly. Right? There's nothing out there, and there's no reason why I would anyways, right? So I know that Representative Bacon and others wanted to press sheriffs on, well, your post certifications, you can be held accountable if you don't follow the law, But I look at that and I go, well, make laws that we can actually follow, right? And I made a testimony piece to it going, as the law currently sits, there's no way I can even enforce this law.
They have to consider the enforceability, the reasonableness, the searches and the constraints on law enforcement even to reach that point.
And this is what they don't understand, right? And I hear a lot of testimony about, well, I've gone to gun stores and I've watched, they sell these magazines. Yeah. And it's brought up of, well, do you know if they sold them to law enforcement?
Exactly.
And the one thing I'd love somebody to ask these people, did you buy one? Hey, if you did buy one, you broke the law. If you didn't buy one, well, then the system works. So it's kind of, my dad used to tell me a story about a guy that was fishing with dynamite and the Division of Wildlife guys in the boat with him. And at a certain point, the Division of Wildlife guy goes, hey, Kevin, that's illegal to fish with dynamite. And he hands him a stick of dynamite that's lit and says, you're going to shut up or fish, right? and that's the situation we're in now with this, is that you're going to shut up and fish, because at the end of the day, there's no way for us as law enforcement to deal with this. Prosecutors are going to have one heck of a time, because here's the thing I can always say, well, my son gave it to me, he's from out of state.
Exactly.
Right.
Or, no, I got it from out of state. They can't. What are they going to ask?
The burden of proof falls on the prosecution. They are going to be, it's going to be unprosecutable.
It's unprosecutable. And I think that's the hard part, to watch this and go, you're making no difference at all other than creating something we've got to get rid of off the books at some point, because it will come off the books. And it's going to cost people a lot of money.
Yeah, absolutely. So moving forward, I'm sure people are wondering what they can do. I would say at this point, you need to email all senators and tell them to vote no on this. I would include Republicans, because I think that maybe they need to feel a little bit of fire and, I mean, this is this is our last chance to really kill this bill. I would also recommend email and call the governor, because he does have the ability to veto this. I'm curious to see, if it does pass and it ends up on his desk, is he going to sign it? Which we all know he played a role in making some of these amendments and making it quote unquote passable. Or is he going to just leave it on his desk and just be like, well, I didn't sign it.
Which allows it to pass.
Exactly.
And I think that's what people need to understand. We have to request him to veto the bill.
Yeah.
Right? If he just lets it go and doesn't sign it, which he could then say, well, I didn't sign the bill.
Exactly.
Right? It goes into effect, though. So if by the end of that date, and I can't remember what the date is, he has not done anything to the bill, it passes regardless.
Yeah.
So he has to veto it.
I think it's like if it sits on your desk for 30 days, then it automatically becomes law.
Yeah.
Again, I mean, don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure that that's what it is.
If
Either
it
way,
sits on his desk for 30 days, he essentially has allowed that bill to pass.
Exactly.
Unless he vetoes the bill directly.
Yeah, it's almost like abstaining from making a vote, right? And here's the thing on this gun stuff, and I know people that abstain from voting one way or the other. It's kind of an easy way out, right? And that's the sad part, is that you elect somebody to make a decision. They need to make a decision. They need to vote on something. You cannot abstain from it because you don't want to have the blood on your hands.
Well, in this case, abstaining is a decision.
It is a decision.
And it does have consequences.
Well, and honestly, if he doesn't sign it, whether he signs it or not, and it passes, this is his bill. I'm going to make sure that I'm going to put his name all over it. This is Jared Polis, his gun ban. like, or his gun bill or his, pay to play bill. But I'm going to make sure that
he's the ultimate signature or allowance to the bill.
But here's the thing: everybody that's talked with him about the bill and it's gotten back to us, he is behind the bill to a degree, right? He's a governor. He is the one pushing on some of these issues for this gun bill. So don't think that the governor's not involved. You're not supposed to be to get involved. Not supposed to have the state get involved. But listen, over the last few years, I've heard the CBI used to pass these types of bills and gun bills. I've heard CPW where they can't testify, they can only answer questions, and the only questions they get from the Democrats are questions that would probably help pass the gun bill. So to me, it is the state exerting its power to say, yes, we want this gun bill. So he can say all he wants to. But if this gun bill gets through, it's on him.
It's entirely within state control.
And you know what really bothers me? It's taking away the power of someone that really needs a firearm for self-defense.
Yes.
So don't think that law enforcement's always going to get to your house on time, because we won't. We can't. We want to. If I could station somebody in front of your home to stop a bad event from happening, I would, but we have no crystal ball.
Well, especially in this county. I mean, you guys are very rural.
There's a lot of miles to cover.
And we're faster than most counties. With our response
so, I mean, that's as much as you'd want to.
And even in more urban areas, it takes a bit of time sometimes.
I know. There's been a few times where I've called law enforcement and it was just like, when are they coming?
Law enforcement's already stretched thin.
I know.
Most officers are already engaged in the call when they're receiving the call, so they have to step away from that call
and
to
Kevin,
respond to the next call.
It's the state has pushed some of these agendas against law enforcement.
Exactly.
They're halfway scared to deal with this, right? And that's a sad place to be. But so when do you protect yourself? When you're in fear of your life, right? And the times when that happens, it's really nice to have a firearm because it really... Try to fend somebody off twice your size. It's not a fun time.
Even if they were your size, I tell my students all the time, even if there was a guy trying to attack me, he was shorter than me, chances are he's stronger than me.
So, Teller County, I just want to thank Ava for coming out today.
Thank you.
It's an amazing discussion we were able to have today. And Kevin, thanks for coming in.
Absolutely, thank you.
Thank you for Teller County for watching, and know that we're with you, and we hope to see you soon.